your career is a marathon. It's not a sprint. Do everything properly for the old institution as well as the new. That was a big learning experience. Another big learning experience was you treat everybody nicely.
Treat everybody you meet as if they were a war hero.
You never know who walks in that door, what their story is, but you can learn something from everybody.
You made a decision to move because you knew it wasn't what you wanted to do. So then you go to the next place. I think that's a courageous, bold move in those days.
Well, thank you. I never thought that. I still don't.
Yeah.
There wasn't any other option in my mind. So
Right.
maybe that's what most of the things that I've done, I don't really think they're options.
With serendipitous, and you met somebody and you respected them, and they were in a position where they could offer you a job.
Yes. And so started there, and actually did very well. But after 3 years there, actually my mentor, Peter, went off into a alternative, a private equity, but real
Right.
estate role at another company, a Canadian company. And then I was kind of left on my own, but that was actually great because now I just was able to kind of flourish. But after 2 years, I realized I'm never going to be president of the bank if I'm coming from finance. I'm never really going to learn. And so this was a big step back in my career.
So you gotta be lending money to
I got to be
somebody.
lending money. That's where
Yeah.
all the leaders are coming from. And I'm sitting over here in finance. Now, I had a corner office. I had a secretary. And I was 24 years old. I had, 5 people reporting to me. I was actually
You had climbed the corporate ladder very quickly, very well. So again, you saw something, and now you're willing to take a step back because that was the road to be the CEO.
I always said sometimes you have to go backwards to go forwards. And I wasn't on the right path in my mind to get where I wanted to be and to learn what I wanted to learn. Because ultimately I wanted to run something and be an owner. And so I thought, well, geez, if I got into lending, now I could learn about companies. I could learn about a bunch of different industries. I could meet very successful founders and entrepreneurs and learn from them. And so I went from the corner office secretary, again, still a young guy, but
Right. Now, did you have a child yet?
when I made that decision to go back to the lending side, we didn't have a child at that point. So that was with just Sissy and me. Sissy, I think, was just graduating college. So it was kind of funny when we got married, both parents basically said, well, you're on your own. And I said, well, you're not going to finish paying for Sissy's college education. I never said that, but there was no money coming for it. So we had to cobble together our own money for that. When we got married, we had less than $1,000 in the bank. So that's where we started from.
Wow.
And that was it. Luckily tuition at public university back then wasn't a lot of money. And Sissy worked part-time, and, we were able to do that. And, we worked on the envelope system. So those first many years, we would just take cash out, put it into envelopes for different things. So we'd have like $20 for eating out for 2 weeks. We'd have, $50, $100 for food. We'd have, and I had all these envelopes, and we just used the envelope system. And that was the cash that we had. And we wouldn't use any credit cards. And that's how we lived for the first few years.
And when you took a step back and you went into this kind of commercial lending, big office, secretaries to the corner cubicle, what was the change, and did you enjoy that more?
It was tough, because, certainly I thought, what the hell did I just do? I'm sitting now here with 21-year-olds. Not that I was that much older, but I was much older. I mean, just the life experience that I had at that point. And now I'm
MBA.
sitting, doing, I thought, kind of kids work, and really starting at the bottom. I didn't get a leg up. It was nice that they granted me the opportunity to go through that training. They didn't reduce my salary because if they'd had, maybe I wouldn't have done it at that point
Right.
because we didn't have the means. We'd bought our first house. I mean, things were tight, living in the envelopes. So I did, but I did think from a career perspective, my long term, and I've always never been, I think a lot of people today think that a career is a sprint. And I always say, particularly in private equity, your career is a marathon. It's not a sprint. Private equity is a marathon. Investment banking might be a sprint, but private equity is a marathon. And I think any career is. That's just the way I grew up.
Right. And what were your days like in this cubicle? Like what and how many is that like 3 years you did that?
Yeah, 3 years, and I was only 6 months in the cubicle, the
Okay.
training program, and then, I got, transferred into a group, of corporate lenders, and again, quickly kinda, said, "Oh, yeah, Troy, you're not a trainee. Here's a book of business," and I was given a few accounts, and I remember one of my first accounts was Eastern Airlines.
Oh, wow, I remember Eastern.
And Southeast at the time didn't have a lending relationship, but we were their primary cash management bank. So we handled all of the outgoing checks, all their incoming deposits, and all of their cash management. So about 6 months into the job, Eastern Airlines goes bankrupt. It's my account, mine.
Oops.
I get a call. Troy, if we accept and cash one check on this bankrupt, because when you go bankrupt, you draw a line in the sand.
Right.
Every check written of that date, if it gets cashed, it goes back to the bank's responsibility. It's a loss. So there's thousands of checks out there. People want to cash them, payroll checks. And so all of a sudden, I am managing and operating a crew of 30, 40 people communicating with, all of our branches across the state and kind of leading the charge on the Eastern bankruptcy. With the number one goal is making sure we don't cash one single check, and then put in place though the ability for them to write checks on their new account
Right.
and put that in place. And so, it was a lot in a very short period of time with making it up as I go, because actually nobody in the bank had any experience with anything like this before. But I was able to convince the folks at Eastern to continue to do business with us. And they left all their depository accounts. So all of a sudden, when you go bankrupt, actually you become, since you don't have to pay all your old bills, and you only are paying your new stuff, you quickly build up this huge cash balance. So back then, all of a sudden we had a cash balance of over $100 million in the demand deposit account, which is the interest-free checking account. They never thought about putting it anywhere. The bank's making more money than it ever had in one day. And so it ended up becoming a very, lucrative and profitable time for the bank. And we were able to, do everything properly for the old institution as well as the new, until ultimately Eastern was taken over by I forget which airline, but that was a big learning experience. Another big learning experience was you treat everybody nicely.
Mhm.
And I learned very early. I got a phone call one day. The people that kind of worked with the operations side, they were at lunch. I was eating lunch at my desk. A phone call comes in. This frantic lady on the call says, "Oh, they're denying my credit card. I need it approved." I'm going, "Well, this is the commercial side of the bank." Anyway, I didn't say any of that. I listened to her. She was a customer. I took care of her. About a month later, she calls up and says, you were so nice. You took care of my problem. By the way, I want to buy a $10 million Challenger Air jet to take me from my home in Paris to Miami to Venezuela. And she happened to be the wife of the owner of the largest industrial business in Venezuela.
Wasn't Cisneros, was it?
It was Polar,
Oh, wow.
the Mendoza family.
Wow.
And so all of a sudden, I'm financing a plane, this $10 million jet, which at the time, again, this is in the 80s, it was
Sure.
kind of a big deal for the bank. And just because I took that call, anyways, a few of these things elevated me at the bank.
I think that's a super valuable lesson. And I think, Pratt, people respond as treated. And
Yes.
you could have responded a lot of different ways. And you probably, learned this through your other careers and your leadership. But what was the big lesson there? Because that had to be a big moment.
Yeah, it was, and I think I learned it from my parents. My parents always treated everybody with respect. My dad, he was a natural born salesperson, and he said, "Troy, you never know who walks in that door, what their story is,
Yeah.
but you can learn something from everybody." And
Yeah. That's
that stuck with me. I haven't always been perfect in that arena, but I try my best to do that. But for the grace of God, all of us could be trading places. One of my favorite movies,
yeah. Well,
and
I have a story there. It just brings up when I was at the Air Force Academy, where I went to school, there was a janitor, William Crawford. And, it was our first year, it was our dually year. Dually means slave. And we kind of
right,
took it out on the poor janitor. We hide his bucket, his water, whatever would kind of spill on the floor, and found out somebody was doing a story on Medal of Honor winners. And there was a guy named William Crawford in Aviano, Italy, who was from Colorado Springs. And there was about 100 men pinned down in Aviano, Italy, and this Panzer battalion was coming. And they needed someone. There was 3 German pillboxes that had them pinned down. So they needed someone to take 3 satchel charges on a suicide mission. So he volunteers. He gets shot twice, but he knocks all 3 out. They thought he had died and they got saved. But when the Germans came, they found him, put him in prison. He survived the war, went back into they thought he died. So his parents posthumously get the Medal of Honor for this guy. And lo and behold, 3 years later,
he shows up.
he shows up. So he stays in the military, becomes a chief master sergeant, and then retires and wants to be around young men and women. So I remember going up to him. It's like, hey, Mr. Crawford, were you in the Army? Yes, son. Were you in World War II in Aviano, Italy? Yes, son. I said, did you win the Medal of Honor? Yes, son. It's like, and then all of a sudden he became like a hero to all of us. And I
Hmm.
remember him teaching me, you know, his mother always said, you have, you know, 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. He taught me when you see people, think on their forehead, they have 4 letters, MMFI, which means make me feel important. And he taught us these questions, which were ask anybody, like, hey, where are you from? And then the magic question that follows is tell me more. And then, do you have a family? Tell me more. And then, hey, when you were a kid, what did you want to be? And when you grew up? And the other question was 2 more questions. He said, if you won $100 million in the lottery, after giving money to your church and all your friends and family, what would you do with the rest and why? And the last question was, when you die, if you had to put 1 word on your tombstone that you aspire to be remembered, what would it be? And I remember teaching that to my kids, and they'd go to dinner parties. They just ask questions and listen.
Right.
And it's like, your daughter is such a conversationalist. She's so
Sensationalist.
smart. She didn't say a word, but but um, that really changed my life. And I wrote in one of my books, I have a chapter on treat everybody you meet as if they were a war hero, because I was ashamed for the way that I treated him. And I remember working in a company, and I always had that picture of him with the Medal of Honor, reminding me to be nice and kind. And when I graduated from college, Ronald Reagan came to give the address, and he had never gone to the White House to get the Medal of
Wow.
Honor. So we gave him the Medal of Honor, and he's the only Army person we buried him in the grounds of the Air Force Academy because he was such a legend. But so then you develop a relationship with someone because you treated them with kindness, respect, solved their problem. And then I'm sure you got noticed by the bank, and you
Yeah.
just kept moving up the corporate ladder, I assume.
Yeah. But then again, I realized, I thought, well, geez, being a lender, I thought at the time I would be the trusted advisor to all these companies and all these founders. And I did build nice relationships, but I found is that every founder treated the bank uh, as a necessary evil.
Mm,
And let's not tell the banker too much, because if we bring them into our opportunities and our challenges, they may pull the money away. And so, I although I learned a heck of a lot, I could read a balance sheet, I could read an income statement, I could decipher a business, I could pick the good ones from the bad ones, enormously helpful from a learning perspective. And in the time that I was in the finance department, I was learning about, we did M&A. And so I was learning how to buy and sell banks, and valuation. So, I was learning really important skills that would really help me later in life. But I wasn't getting what I really wanted, which was that that kind of, how can I help a business?